So, to recount, there are two I's in winning. The first I represents independent individual preparation, and the second I represents interdependent collaboration. To elevate people, to take them from where they are to where they need to be, to walk into that NFL team meeting and say something that will inspire them to take themselves to the next level. Obviously, we all need a step-by-step proven process, a formula, if you will, that will take anyone from where they are to where they need to be. I call it the 10 commitments of building a winning team, the 10 C's. The first I in winning represents independent individual preparation. Remember, please don't let me be the weak link. And that's a focus on the first 6 of the 10 commitments. The first commitment, C number 1, clarity. Who are you really? There are so many stories pinballing around in my mind, but perhaps one of my favorites that I could share is from history. French emperor, if you will, French King Louis XVI had his throne overthrown by a warring faction. And in those days, as history tells the tale, most of the royal families were murdered when there was a coup. But in this particular instance, when King Louis XVI of France had his throne overthrown, not only did they take him away, but they kidnapped his young son, the prince. And his captors decided that if they just took him away to a faraway land and subjected him to every defiling, unrefined, pathetic thing in the world, that if they could somehow build a case against him to destroy his character, that he would actually forget about his heir to the throne. So for 6 months straight, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they force-fed this young prince food, trying to make him a slave to appetite. They introduced him to wine and to lustful women and to the crazy things of this world that would tempt any regular human being, especially we weak males, to wallow in the gutter and become addicted to our appetites and to the materialistic pleasures of the world. But after 6 months of constant bombardment, trying to destroy the character and the sense of self in this young son, the prince, finally his captors gave up and they confronted him. Why have you not allowed us to break your character? Why have you not succumbed to our temptations? And the young son, the prince, in his maturity, looks his captors square in the eyes. And he says, I'm so sorry I can't do what you've asked me to do, for I was born to be a king. Clarity. Who are you really? And what is your potential? There's a B-rated movie. It's called Gattaca. I don't recommend it, but the premise of the movie is awesome. Every person born into this world is immediately given a blood test. And the results of that blood test determine what you will be for the rest of your life. You'll be an educator. You'll be an engineer. You'll be a physician. You'll be an athlete. You'll be a bum. We have no choice. The star of that lame movie is Ethan Hawke. That's why I don't recommend that you watch the movie. Let me just teach you the point. In the middle of the movie, suddenly Ethan Hawke, the star of the movie, becomes more successful than anyone else. He stands out in the crowd. And the city council calls an emergency meeting. And one council member says he has exceeded his potential. And the grand poobah, the coach, if you will, the executive of the company stands up in that meeting and says, oh, no. No one can ever exceed his potential. We just misjudged it. How many of us are associating with people who have misjudged our potential our entire lives? You've heard me say it, and I'll say it again. We become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most, which means if you hang around with 5 broke people, you're going to become the 6th. If you hang around with 5 negative, whining people, you're going to become the 6th, which means we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings. And the extraordinary are the disciplined, healthy, and significant. Whoa, that brings us to the second C, the second commitment in the first I in winning, character. Character can be defined in many, many ways. I just simply say it's what we do when no one's around that matters. It's making sure that we're the same on stage as we are off stage, the same on and at work as we are off work. Character is about understanding how important it is for us to be clear on who we are, focused in on reaching our potential. Enough said. The third C in the first I in winning is competence. Competence, which breeds confidence. So in the corporate arena, you have to be competent. You have to know your products and services inside out. You need to know the history of your industry. You need to know the history of your competition and their pricing structure and understand your benefits versus your features and your features versus your benefits, so you're in a competitive environment with a competitive advantage. Knowing that competitive advantage does not come by doing more than your competition. Competitive advantage in sports, in business, in education, in life comes by doing what your competition is not willing to do, which brings us to the fourth C in building a winning team: consistency. Yes, I already said we have to be the same off stage as we are on stage, or no one will trust us. The fifth C is competitiveness. We don't compete against others. There's no nobility in defeating someone else or being better than someone else. True nobility is in bettering our own past best personal performance and becoming better today than we were yesterday, not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of ourselves. And the sixth C in the first I in winning is cause. Remember my story about playing football for 13 years? I was hit in a tackling drill in practice. I was paralyzed for 14 months. 16 doctors told me I'd never get any better. And as I started to get better, I was asked to speak. And now I'm asked the question, why did you take so long to recover? If you're going to get better, my friends, what's taking you so long? What's holding you back? As you recall from my story, the reason why I stayed paralyzed for 14 months, physically and emotionally, was because I was asking the wrong questions. You see, I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself why. And once we answer why, figuring out the how-to is pretty simple. Which, by the way, makes beginning with the end in mind obsolete. Think about it. If you begin with the end in mind, it forces you to focus in on a destination that's impressive. Keeping up with the Joneses, whoa, great raise, motivated by that bonus, nice car, nice neighborhood, nice job title. But we'll die with our music still in us. Beginning with the end in mind forces us to focus on a destination that's impressive and do our best to manage people and reward results. Wow. Remember, we can't coach results. We can only coach behavior. So that makes that statement and theory and principle obsolete. If we really are serious about transforming our lives from successful to significance and building that winning team that's a legacy organization, that's a dynasty that continually keeps on winning, we have to begin with the why in mind, the cause. Because when we begin with the why in mind, it allows us to focus on a journey that's important, so our lives matter. And what matters most is what lasts the longest, which means now we manage expectations and reward effort. Again, trying to become better today than we were yesterday just because we can. The first 6 C's, the first 6 commitments in the 10 commitments of building a winning team. The second I in winning represents interdependent collaboration, which are the final 4 C's or commitments to the 10 commitments of building a winning team. Number 7, chemistry. Whoa. At the end of the day, it's not what you do, it's who you do it with. Do you agree? Proof. Any of you have horses? Any of you ever seen a horse? Tough crowd. Do you realize when you put a hard-to-catch horse in the same field with an easy-to-catch horse, most of the time you end up with 2 hard-to-catch horses? And in the human experience, when you put a healthy child in the same room with a sick child, most of the time you end up with 2 sick children. Moral to the story, to be disciplined, healthy, and significant, now tying back to something we already said, we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with the disciplined, healthy, and significant. Now put yourself in their position. In order for us to understand the law of attraction, we attract what we believe we deserve. In order to have that kind of a teammate, we must first be that kind of a human being. The eighth C, the eighth commitment in our 10 commitments to building a winning team, is contribution. Now think back on my story of working with the NFL teams and my famous broomstick test, where I invite a prima donna to the front of the room, and in front of his teammates, the broomstick is being held 12 inches off the floor. The prima donna superstar can actually jump 38 inches high. And if you recall, I asked him, do you think you can jump over the 12-inch high broomstick? He's like, so I changed the question, will you jump over the 12-inch high broomstick? And he does. And then the teaching begins. Why did you only jump 12 inches high when you and your teammates know you can jump 38 inches high? And his answer is always the same, because that's all you asked me to do. Do you remember? Well, it ties into the eighth C, the eighth commitment of building a winning team and a legacy dynasty organization. You see, it's called contribution. And if everyone with whom you live and work and worship and recreate knows you can jump 38 inches high, and you only jump 12 inches high, or you jump 24 inches high, or maybe your potential, your highest possible potential is to jump 30 inches high, and you're still only jumping 25 or 26 inches high, the question on the table is, will anyone trust you? No. And we know that the bottom line definition of sales is the transference of trust. We only do business with those whom we trust. And the folks that I know who have actually gone to the trouble of formulating that Excel spreadsheet to determine where their best customers have come for the last 5 or 6 years, do you know what their statistics always reveal? That 90 to 95% of their best customers always come from a referral or someone in their networking circle of influence. Wow. Trust is about contribution, giving it everything we've got when less would be sufficient, not because it's expected by others, but because it's demanded of ourselves. And the ninth C in our 10 commitments of building a winning team is collaboration. It's not about competing against others. It's about how can I help you? How can you help me? Understanding that in the business world, wealth flows through you, not to you, which means you can get anything in this life that you want if you're willing to help enough other people get what they want. With the belief that when the water in the lake goes up, all the boats rise together, understanding that the whole entire purpose of a team is to win. Wow. Which brings us to the 10th and final C, the 10th and final commitment to building a winning team and a dynasty legacy organization: conclusion. The reality, anybody can make a sales presentation. The goal is to close the deal. To close the deal. And that's what it's all about. Based on trust and understanding, those teams who have the greatest number of I players on them win and continually win because they understand number 10 is conclusion. And isn't it interesting, in our world of competition, that conclusion is best taught to us from the Alcoholics Anonymous organization, who for over 75 years has been the single most effective non-medical solution to beating any addiction. They are famous for their 12-step program. And step number 1 is admit that you have a problem, admit that you have a challenge. And you know what? Everyone who's been involved with Alcoholics Anonymous will tell you. The experts, the therapists, the doctors, the physicians, and those battling their addiction who have recovered because of the 12-step program, every one of them will tell you that you can have the first 11 steps down, amalgamated into your everyday thoughts and behaviors. But unless you actually practice and obey the 12th step, you'll start drinking again. The 12th step is to find and identify another addict and help him or her. So part of this conclusion is not only to understand that in a 4x100 track relay race, they usually leave the fastest sprinter as the closer to take that baton from the third member of their relay team and sprint to victory. They can count on him or her. He or she is the fastest and the strongest on the team. But in my estimation, in my experience, in the real world in which we live, corporate, sports, education, religious, family, just life in general. The closers, the ones that everybody loves and relies on, are those who give more than they ever take, who are in the lead because everybody wants to be like him or her. They're in the lead closing the deal because we like to do business with winners. Again, as a reminder, you can take any team from wherever you are, from wherever they are, and using this time-tested, step-by-step, proven formula of focusing in on the 10 commitments to building that winning team, can take a last place NFL team to a Super Bowl championship, as I have, can turn around a struggling company and organization, as I have, using this simple, time-tested, proven formula.